Everyone, welcome to our presentation. So in this presentation, we will discuss the identity negotiation theory. So first of all, I would like to introduce our team member. Okay, next slide. Next slide. Okay, our team includes 5 members, Rina and Antoinette, Jinlei, that's me, and Brenda, Cecily. The next slide. Each of us is responsible for one part of the presentation. So for me, I will briefly talk about the introduction and the background of the identity negotiation theory. So the identity negotiation theory was developed by Professor Stella Ting Tomi, who is a professor of speech communication at California State University, Fullerton. The identity negotiation theory was first published in 1986 as a book chapter, and further developed in the following years. In 1999, the 10 formal assumptions of identity negotiation theory was presented in the book Communication Across Culture. And in 2005, Professor Ting Tomi brought out the 5 boundary crossing identity dialectical themes of this theory. So this is a very brief history of the identity negotiation theory. Okay, next slide. As illustrated in this theory, the core concept of this theory is identity. So the identity is the self-concept or self-image that we get from our family, gender, culture, ethnic, and individual socialization process. So we have mainly we have 2 levels of identity: the social identity and the personal identity. So for the personal identity, this is the unique attributes that we associate with ourselves, especially in comparison with those of others. So next slide. The social identity is a little bit more complex. It comprises several dimensions of identity, including culture or ethnic membership identity, gender, sexual orientation, social class, age, disability, professional identity, and several others. So next slide. So after introducing the concept of identity, we will talk about the essentials of the identity negotiation theory. So this theory tries to understand how individuals form, develop, and adjust their identities in various social contexts. So in this theory, identity is not fixed, but rather shaped through interaction, negotiation, and interpretations with social environments. So during the identity negotiation, communicators invoke their own desired identity in the interaction and also attempts to challenge or support the other's identity. So individuals also navigate the tensions and conflicts. So during our interpersonal communication or negotiation process, some tensions and conflicts do happen. So individuals can navigate these tensions and conflicts, aiming to establish a coherent sense of self that agree with different social contexts. So next, during the identity negotiation, the identity dialectics also arise, including identity security or vulnerability, identity inclusion or differentiation, identity predictability or unpredictability, identity connection or autonomy, identity consistency or identity change. So this is the main basic content of the identity negotiation theory. And in the following slide, Rina will introduce assumptions and other related contents of the identity negotiation theory.
Thank you so much, Jing, for your part. And then I'm going to discuss the theory assumptions first. So there are 8 theory assumptions proposed by the theorists. The first one discusses about like multiple images concerning a self of sense. Since when we talk about the sense of self, there's different variables or variety factors that affects. First is our self concept, our belief about ourselves. How about self-esteem that starts from the childhood and adulthood, and also a self-efficacy, which means the belief on what he or she can accomplish. So that's why it's like multiple factors about sense of self. The second one discuss about the how cultural variability leads to difference in self-concept, because cultures have different series of rules of living and exist within different environments. So for example, when you talk about the environment, like I always say about like how I grew up in different environment in Philippines, which education is not one of the privilege. That's why I value the education so much, and that can also affect our sense of self, or how it influences the sense of self. Sorry. The third one discusses about the involvement of security and vulnerability. This is the ability to recognize and face the emotional risks and challenges that come with being authentic. It also requires courage, poise, and confidence to face and tolerate the feelings that may arise when something won't go as planned. The fourth one discusses about the boundary. So in anything we do, if we expect something and we set limit from that expectation, it is easier to manage and motivate behavior aftermath. The fifth one is about the differentiation of inclusion, the difference between inclusion and differentiation. So in social cultural context, differentiation means the differences among individuals and groups based on various dimensions, while inclusion means it refers to the efforts to embrace and value those differences. So without the proper identification of the difference between the two, the misunderstanding may arise and then create attention. Sixth one would be talking about trying to balance the self, because this was also discussed before in our group member when we share someone about a culture or belief. And outside that group, there are other individuals who we have to interact and build a good or casual relationship, including ourselves. The seventh one discusses about the inclusion differentiation dialect, which meaning this is how we manage to regulate issues in setting membership based on boundaries. And the last one is the coherent sense of influence. This is the knowledge and ability to apply cognitive, affective, and behavioral resources appropriately, effectively, and creativity in diverse interaction and situations. Next, Valerie will be discussing about the proposition, which is also part of the theory.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for your part. So I will be discussing the propositions oh, for the theory. So according to the Ting Tume, the one of the propositions was that the more vulnerable individuals feel, the more anxiety they were experienced during interactions. This meant that if someone is not secured about themselves, and it would have he will feel insecure about how he will experience their interactions and communicate with others. Number two, uh, individual vulnerability is affected by their needs or security. As I said before, if someone is not secure of themselves, and this is also part of the self-esteem, it could affect a lot of how they will manage and how they will interact with different peoples and or meeting new people. Number three, the greater the individual self-esteem and the greater their uh, collective esteem is, it's the more resourceful with interacting with people. Number four, the more individuals need differentiation, it's the more distance they place. What I understood with number four is that normally when people feel different or feel out of place with uh, strangers, they tend to keep their distance between them, and they don't have that security about opening their self to let others know about them. And for number 5, the individual's motivation to communicate has to do with their cognitive, affective, and behavior. This means that depending how the way you think, your emotional state, and how you behave with people depends on how you will communicate and how you will have the motivation to talk and to make new relationships.
Thank you. The next part is we will be playing a video of activity where the identity negotiation occurs. And I will be talking about slide for after.
Are social identities for negotiation occurs. One of which is bicultural identity negotiation, ethnic membership. Navigating through cultures, bicultural individuals need to manage anxiety related to emotional insecurity or vulnerability because of a perceived threat or fear in a culturally strange environment. Additionally, they experience othering because their bifurcated identity is not sufficient for either the in-group or out-group individuals. Next is social class identity negotiation. Let's think about the famous Batman. Bruce Wayne and Batman are the same person but have different identities. When he is in one of the identities, he tries to detach his identity from one self to another. Anything he does as Batman does not reflect his identity as Bruce Wayne and vice versa. He is able to do his mission as Batman without the consequences on his name, Bruce Wayne. Despite his secret identities, he still experiences social identity conflicts. His lifestyle, social economic identities as Bruce Wayne or Batman are not parallel to each other. He needed to manage between both. Another one is aging identity negotiation. An individual experiences the aging process from infancy to middle age to old age. It does not necessarily mean only feeling and being young or old. Instead, the focus is on what their age means at this point in their lives. What to do next? For a high schooler, maybe.
So if somebody was a professional before, and if they had if they have children, sometimes they might transition into a stay-at-home mom. So that's another identity negotiation that's happening in their lives. And as they age, the roles are also diminished. Like for being a provider, they become grandparents, and it actually is another adjustment for their life. And the next slide, please. So as we've seen in the video, we talked about culture, ethnic membership, identity. These are just some of the social identities where people had to negotiate their identities. So one is the being Asian Caucasian individuals, and according to Think to Me, for instance, bicultural Asian Caucasian individuals need to manage emotional insecurity and vulnerability while communicating with Asian or Caucasian peers, not regard them as in-group members. So bicultural individuals may not be fully accepted by other group. So this is called othering, kind of like if you are Asian, you're not Asian enough, or you're not Caucasian enough. So there's a gap in between where they feel like they don't entirely belong. Next slide, please. So for the social class identity, we experience what happened in the movies for especially for Batman's identity. His social rank, his economic status doesn't really is not parallel with his vigilante image, which at times he had to navigate himself, and there's a conflict of interest in between, so he had to manage both. And then I believe the next one we'll be talking about the professional identity. That's what we talked about, where somebody has the identity salience manifest in the situation where a person work as a doctor all their life, and their world revolve in around that job, and it is the highest affiliation to their identity. So when they spend time, they spend less time with other things, and when retirement comes, they feel that they lost a huge part of who they are as an individual. I know it coincides for the age identity and then personal identity. All of these are multifaceted identities where identity negotiation occurs. And to the next presentation.
Thank you, Brenda. So I will be continuing the presentation discussing the consequences in theory application. So based on all these theory information and ideas, there can be consequences on how it affects our interpersonal relationship. So the first one would be multiple changing and co-founded identities reflect. So as we try to fit in a group or interact with different individuals, with different belief and perspective, a conflict may arise because we are sharing too much information that we expect at least others to understand. The second one is like the enforcement of depth in self-disclosure or deceiving to fit in. As we discussed before, we have the Johari window and the social penetration theory. We self-disclose based on how we establish a great relationship with other people. But since we are trying to fit in an environment with different factors, this might enforce us to have disclose our information more or deceive to fit in different environment. As Jackson 2014 explains that, quote, unquote, even in casual contact with others, we are constantly exchanging codes of personhood, worldview, indeed our identities. And the third one would be dilemmas in attempting to reach out and hold back at the same time, seeking mutual validation and protecting our own vulnerability, which is kind of like self-explanatory. Like what I said earlier, there's different factors affecting our this decision to fit in an environment, and then too much information shared would lead to like different mutual contrast or conflict between mutual validation. The fourth one would be carrying undetachable identities into every culture and conversational encounter. Since individual was born adapting ideas were accustomed to their identity, and as they grow older they decide on who is worthy of the sustained relationship. The fifth one is the role and self-identity confusion. From the time we are born and given name by our parents, we are inextricably dependent on others to play part in how we define ourselves and why we define ourselves as we do. Consequently, our identities are shaped, molded during interactions with others. That leads to self role and self identity confusion. And the last one would be frequently seeking centrality to give an individual a sense of belongingness can produce to anxiety. This is especially important among minorities that is happening most of the time or the current situation, who are marginalized and treated as not normal because of their differences. Their attachment to the culture, for example, is the matter of their survival. So if we try to fit in, it's okay to try to fit in and it's also healthy, but frequently doing may lead to anxiety and reinforcement of social positioning. Next part would be the benefits of negotiation theory that will be continued by Sidlal.
Okay. So some of the benefits for the negotiation theory, thank you. Number one would be that people are able to encounter their identity and being able to be understood and respected. Meaning that when someone knows their identity, it's easier for them to feel respected and to feel in place without not feeling like they do not fit in because they know who they really are. Number two would be that they learn to adapt to different cultures with your in-group and out-group, which I found this really interesting because I really like to know about different cultures. And when you learn to adapt and to learn about different cultures, you just think about how different things are, and also like what's how you combine both of them, and you can create like different when it comes to different cultures, you get to learn a lot of them. Number three is that individuals are able to feel valued, as I said, like in number one, as you feel you know your identity and you feel respected, you are able to feel valued. Number four, it helps to create stronger relationships. No. Number five, identity negotiation helps you to have a different worldview. It helps you to see see everything in a different way when it comes to different cultures and how you learn about different people. Number six, individuals are able to align themselves with others in a behavioral and a cognitive way.
Thank you, Citlali. Um, I hope you enjoyed our presentation. This is the final slide, the conclusion of the theory. I have provided 4 questions that are important. Number 1, what is identity negotiation theory? Identity negotiation theory is when people would negotiate and to be able to reach an agreement, also to reflect self-views. For an example, when people in all different cultures desire more towards positive identity to a communications situation. Number 2, why do you think theory will explain certain phenomena about identity complex? In this theory, it gives other ways during interpersonal communication that is followed by identities. Conflict, culture, negotiation, and more. For example, it's when communicating with each other and to agree on something together. Number 3, how are assumptions and portions proposed by the theorists help in understanding the theory? Well, it gives you a better understanding of an idea we can accept that can be applied to building interpersonal relationships better. For example, it's when a person or a couple are trying to find a solution that help one another. Number 4, overall, how knowing to negotiate the multi-faced identity benefits us to transition in our lives from one identity to another. Knowing the multi-faced identity negotiation can help us navigate the different aspects of our lives, such as interpersonal communication, self-awareness, understanding conflicts, and practicing growth mindset. It will help individuals to understand themselves and the world around them through seeing things in different cultures, professions, social class, ethnic backgrounds, and gender identity. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And that ends our presentation. Thank you for listening.